let's see, it's March 25th, and we are by the river in Anderson, between Derby Downs and Riverbend Park, right off the trail. And got some wild carrot over here. So wild carrot's also known as Queen Anne's lace, and it produces later in the summer small umbrella-like formations of flowers, and then the seeds. In the second year of growth, it's biennial. So the primary edible part is the root, and I should have brought a digging stick to demonstrate digging, but basically you just take a digging stick or a digging fork and stick it in right next to the root and then pull it out in the first year of growth, preferably, because it'll get woody in the second year. Yeah, and it's a wild carrot, so it tastes a lot like a carrot. Seed head of wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace. So before the seeds, there would be, the little white flowers, the umbrella-shaped cluster of little white flowers that Queen Anne's lace is so well known for. And then the seeds have already all blown off, but this stays up, throughout the stalk stays up throughout the year. If you have this growing in your yard, it's kind of nice to just leave it and let it be habitat for insects. But yeah, and the seeds are actually also useful as a spice, or here's a few. It's an aromatic seed, so it's nice for digestive complaints. You can grind them up and put them in food or make a tea with it. It is contraindicated for during pregnancy. It's actually used as an abortifacient. So if you're pregnant, probably be okay, but better not to take a chance. So that's Queen Anne's lace seeds. Here we have one of the most poisonous plants in our area, poison hemlock. It is in the carrot family, carrot and parsley family. So the foliage looks quite a bit like some plants that are pretty tasty and useful that you might want to forage, that you might want to harvest. So it's good to be able to identify this because it is actually pretty common in our area. So it has some purplish dots on the stem, unlike wild carrot, which is probably the most likely wild edible that would look similar to this that you would want. And the stems are hollow. I kind of tore it up, but the stem is hollow. It smells bad. Also, I've never tasted it, but it apparently tastes really bad, which is the case with most poisonous plants. Just kind of nature's way of letting us know to be careful. So anyway, be wary of it, but don't be scared of it. It's here. All right, well, this is wild onion or wild garlic. The species distinction it's not something I've ever gotten the hang of, but it doesn't matter a whole lot because they're all edible and can be used in a similar way. So they generally have hollow stems. This really, they look kind of like chives or green onions. It's got that onion garlic, very slight odor. You have to kind of put it right up to your nostril to smell it, but tastes like chives or green onion. Pretty easy to identify, and you can use it just like you would use chives or a really small green onion. And if you want to transplant some, if you've come across some in the wild, and you see this is a nice, really healthy stand, you're not going to hurt it by taking some of the roots. So you can always, it helps to have a little tool, but sometimes you can just pull it up from the dirt like this. And if you have a bag, you can put it in that bag, take it home. If you're gonna be out for a while, it's nice to wrap it up in a damp cloth or paper towel to keep it moist so it doesn't dry out and desiccate. And then just, put it in your garden soil and you'll have some wild onions growing in your yard.
Waiting for an answer.
looking at several species of edible medicinal plants. I'm going to mostly talk about one, but I'm just going to point out a few others that I talk about in a little more detail in another video. Here's Queen Anne's lace. So you can see that it's at this stage it's not as well developed as poison hemlock, which is closely related to, and the growth, the leaf, the foliage is a lot more open and also lighter green. So while they do have similarities, it's pretty easy to tell them apart once you've seen each of them. And there's a bunch of it in this area. Queen Anne's lace, also known as wild carrot. Here is some dandelion, much smaller than it is in our yard right now, being in the little cooler location by the river. And let's see, I think there was something else I saw here I wanted to mention just briefly. Here's a violet, really small right now. The main thing I wanted to talk about here was garlic mustard. It's at really its ideal stage right now, before it's gotten warm, before there's been any energy going into reproduction. So in general with greens, you want to harvest them, whether for food or medicine, before the flower stalk comes up, because at that point the energy is going into flowering and then seed, and the leaves, the flavor generally becomes really bitter, and bitter's fine, but it's losing some of the rest of its flavor profile, and not as nutritive or medicinal. So better to harvest them at this stage. Really delicious right now. Garlic mustard is it's considered an invasive exotic. I really like it, and in fact I'm encouraging its growth in my yard. It's gotten a bad rap for being an invasive. It can get kind of rampant in some areas, but a lot of invasives do really well in places where natives don't. And we've altered our landscape such that natives often don't do well with all the asphalt, concrete, climate changes, changes in soil, water patterns, whole list of things. Other plants are going to come in and thrive, and garlic mustard is one of those. And I feel like instead of demonizing them, we should find ways to use them and enjoy them and appreciate them and thank them for their presence here and maintaining the soil and other life. So a really nice wild green, and I was nibbling on this all winter, so it is a really hardy plant, especially if there's snow cover. It often lasts all winter. This is a dandelion. It has, I think a lot of people can identify easily after it flowers, but it's better. The greens and root are better before it flowers, so it's really good to be able to identify it by its leaf. And so it has this pretty distinctive toothed leaf. The presentation can vary a little bit. Sometimes the toothing is deeper than others, and sometimes it's more rounded. The leaves can also vary a lot in size. Usually in the shade, they'll get a little bit bigger throughout the course of the summer. And of course, they'll also be harvestable longer in the shade too, because they're less likely to flower. So the reason to harvest it early is that they'll be more nutrition medicine. Dandelions are extremely nutritious, and I'll dig one up to show you its taproot. Alright, so taking this dandelion weeder and just finding the base of the above ground part of the plant, and then sliding the weeder down along the root and trying to pop it up, gently tugging on it. And well, this is not a super impressive root, but they do get quite a bit longer and wider. This is a fairly small one, probably in part because it's growing next to a tree, but see it's pretty muddy. It takes some work to clean it off, but with the bigger root, it's definitely worth it. So, pretty easy to find at hardware stores. Chickweed. The flowers have partially closed because of probably the wind, but it's really really delicious wild edible green, and unlike a lot of wild greens, it's really the whole aerial part that's good to eat. So raw, so the stem, the leaves, and the flower, you can just munch on the whole thing all at once. And I haven't really cooked with it much, but I could see it being good in stir fries. But I usually just nibble on it while we're hiking or out in the yard. Probably my favorite wild edible right now. It's really mild tasting, kind of a little bit on the sweet side, just a hint of bitterness, but really, yeah, just really delicious and nutrient packed, as are most wild edibles. Usually grows in masses, especially out in the wild. We just have a few small areas. We have a bigger patch over by our compost pile. So yeah, usually the flower is a little more open. It's white flower, star-shaped flower. The Latin name is Stellaria. Yeah, so you'll find this in damp areas, oftentimes with richer soil. Really delicious. Also very soothing for the skin and also internally, and it's in a lot of like ointments. So good plant to know. Just real briefly, this is deadhead nettle in the mint family, square stems, flowering really early this year. It's not even April yet. Got the kind of purplish pink flowers. It's again a wild edible, and the whole aerial part. The stem is a little coarser on this, but very, very common plant to see around the yard and in disturbed areas. And then also, real quickly, violet is a common wild edible medicinal plant. The greens are edible raw or cooked. Nice addition to salad. It's a little coarser, but at this time of the year, it's still pretty tender. Really mild flavor, kind of sweet. The flowers are also edible. This is not flowering yet, and again, this is also very soothing too. So soothing for the lungs, nutritive for the lungs, and also just a nice mild tasting wild green that's really common. And I like to just let it go in the garden because it's an attractive plant and also super useful. Well, a few years ago I transplanted some stinging nettles from the river to our yard. So unlikely that you'll have stinging nettles in your own yard unless maybe you live out in the country and have a farm or some land, some damp, rich land. And that's what stinging nettles like. You'll find it on the edges and woods, usually near streams, yeah, not often in yards. I've planted this underneath a black walnut. Most plants don't do well near black walnut, but stinging nettles does just fine. There's another plant called wood nettles that is a lot like stinging nettles, and it is used somewhat interchangeably, but stinging nettles is more medicinal. Wood nettles is more nutritive. Stinging nettles is a little bit stringier, so it's better for as tea or medicine making. But you can eat it. It's just the leaves are smaller and stringier. And it's called stinging nettle because it does sting. It has formic acid coming out of the little hairs on the stem and underside of the leaves, and same chemical as in fire ants. Not quite as painful as fire ants, but definitely can cause an electric sensation that is uncomfortable. I don't mind it too much, so I usually harvest barehanded, but just really carefully, kind of like this, pinch it off like so. But a lot of people wear gloves, and so I've used it mostly for immune support for myself. I have seasonal allergies, and I found stinging nettles to be really helpful in tonifying my lungs, the immune system in general, and kind of drying things up a little bit too. Nettles is mildly drying, and also kind of cooling. So if you tend to be on the cold and dry side, you might want to add something into the mix that would balance that out a little bit. But nettles is in general, it's an extremely safe herb for medicine and food, and so you don't need to worry too much about it. Other than harvesting, you might want to be careful. Yeah, it's a little bit early right now to harvest a lot from. This is a really early spring plant. Wood nettles comes up a little later, so this is going to get a lot bigger, like probably 5 to 7 feet tall. Really delicious tea, at least I find. Very mildly bitter and really packed with minerals. So even if you're not taking it for a specific issue, it just is a nice tonic herb to have around. So and really easy to grow in your yard if you don't mind the possibility of it spreading. It does spread. So you can just dig up a root and plant it in your yard if you have a damp, out of the way location. So stinging nettles. Should have said earlier, if you don't have one of these, you can also use a shovel or a digging fork, preferably a digging fork, because a shovel will be more likely to break the root. But yeah, shovel will work also. And finally, just a quick note: these plants, they're not just inanimate objects. They're living beings, and I feel like in general they appreciate our attention. They appreciate being used, but it's best to do it with a sense of appreciation and respect. However you want to do it, it could just be a silent acknowledgement. You could leave a gift. I used to sometimes with more special plants that I was really excited about, I might even leave a piece of my hair with them, which might seem a little hokey, but it made me feel good. But these are beings that talk to each other and can communicate with us in a variety of ways and deserve our respect. If you'd like to stay updated about future videos, you can like my channel, subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to learn more about plant walks in the area, which is Anderson, Indiana, you can send me an email at josh@whiteriverchiatsu.com, and a link to that email address will be in the video description. All right, thank you very much.